Hey everybody, welcome back to The Ebony Escape. My name's Jessica, and today we're going to talk about books that could be helpful to your art career. I graduated college with a degree in computing in the arts and studio art, and I minored in something called arts management. And basically, arts management is a program that teaches you how to manage business from an arts perspective. Because getting a straight up business degree is all well and good, but looking at business specifically from the arts perspective can help you excel in arts business or arts management or with your art career, whether you're doing something as like a solopreneur or you're working for another company. So I just wanted to share some books that I've acquired during my time at college and show you how they've been useful and helpful and why I still keep them on my shelf for reference. So my first book is called Steal Like an Artist. It's gotten some use out of it, so that's why it's like a little rundown and the pages are kind of coming out, but it's a really great book. And the reason why I wanted to start off with this is because you get into the arts because of inspiration and wanting to make something new and be creative. And whether you're doing that on like a solo level, like you're a visual artist and you're working by yourself in the studio, or you're working with a group to create something, you need constant reminders and inspiration to help keep you going on your art journey and learn how to make good work and how to make a good process for your work. And this book really helps you with that. And I got this book when I was in college. I wasn't told to get it by like a teacher or anything. I just like found it in like the college bookstore. And it's just been a nice little helpful guide and reminder as I go forth in my creative journey. I also have the companion journal, which is called the Steal Like an Artist Journal, a notebook for creative kleptomaniacs. And that is a way to take the advice from this book and to like apply it into like exercises that you can use so that you can remain creative and like keep your brain going. Basically, this book is a nice creative pep talk, and it's nice when you need like some direction every now and then. And it's great to refer to no matter if you're on the beginning of your journey or you're already in the midst of it and you've already made some things, but you need some redirection or some more inspiration or some motivation to keep moving forward, or like how to refresh in your practice and things like that. The author of the book is a writer named Austin Kleon, and he describes himself as a writer who draws. He says that he makes art with words and words with pictures. And I always love some interdisciplinary stuff. That's one of my favorite things. Like, even though you guys see me making principally visual art on the channel, I don't like to just be locked down to one thing, and that's probably just like the ADHD in me, but I just want to do so many different things. So him saying that he's a writer who draws and he makes words with pictures really connects with me, because I love the idea of like doing multiple things and not just being locked down to one field. And so he really does understand that. And that's another reason why I appreciate his insight from this book as well. Kleon gives actionable advice that you can use to try to keep up with making your creative practice maintainable and fresh. And he also talks about how to connect with other creatives, whether they're in your zip code or they're on the internet. One thing that I also appreciate that Austin Kleon said was the idea about keeping a day job in this book. And the reason why I appreciate that so much is there's a good portion of us out there who are not making a full living off of our creative work. We want to, but we know that we're not there yet. And the reason why I appreciate that is because even if you were making a full living or not, having a day job can give us the structure that we need to implement into our practice and that kind of stuff. And it also helps us keep from being isolated, because when you're a creative in whatever aspect of the word, it's not always going to be easy to find other visual artists or other musicians or other people that want to be art directors or film directors or producers or whatever you're trying to do. It's not always easy to find that community immediately around you. You'll find yourself explaining what you're doing a lot more to people that are not in the field or don't really get it or might even discourage you from it. And so he's reminding you that you can use your day job to like add structure and like have some kind of like connections with your coworkers and the people that you interact with at your job. And in the meantime, you can find different communities, whether it's through like meetup.com or through different group chats and stuff like that available on the internet, and you can find other creatives. I've actually found a good portion of other creatives that I'm connected with online, and we like have group chats and stuff where we talk to each other and we meet up and do lives and Zoom meetings and stuff like that and talk about what everyone's doing. So, you know, If you need a day job, do not feel ashamed. Most people need a day job. And if you're trying to look for connection, definitely look inside your zip code, but also don't forget the internet. If you want to start a group chat and you're like, well, I want to connect with other creators that do this, that, and the other, see if that group chat exists. See if that Discord exists. And if it doesn't, make one. And the next book is the Graphic Artists Guild Handbook for Pricing and Ethical Guidelines. And I got this because I saw Jacqueline DeLeon get this book, or she had it in like her studio when she did a studio tour some years ago. And basically, this book is great for anyone, especially that is a solopreneur. I would definitely recommend this to someone that is working independently and they're looking at taking on clients and they have to determine pricing for their services. So this is great for graphic artists. If you're working in illustration, if you're working in animation, graphic design, anything where you're making a visual product that you have to give to people, like in an illustrative kind of setting, or like animation or posters or whatever that you're doing, and you're trying to determine the best ethical way to handle your business, all the way from pricing to typical turnaround times and stuff like that, this book gives you that kind of information. And they update the book, I think, either every year or every couple of years. So this is a very good guide. I used this when I was doing like a practice commission with like a colleague that I'd met, and I was trying to determine what, if I'm gonna do like an illustration, what's a good turnaround time for making this part of the illustration? What's a good time to turn around line art, to turn around coloring and finalize this? What's a good deposit? What is a typical pricing for this type of work? This kind of helps you answer those questions. If you're like, well, I don't know how to price my work, I don't know exactly how to handle contracts for this, or like what is a typical agreement that would be set up in this situation, this book really helps you with that. So basically, instead of learning about the discipline that you work in, like this book isn't going to teach you about animation or graphic design or anything like that. It's going to teach you how to move in the business of what you're doing. So it's going to teach you how to price animations. It's going to teach you the typical turnaround times for a certain type of animation or graphic design or illustration or whatever you're doing. You'll be able to answer questions like, how much should you charge someone for illustrating and typesetting their cover? Is it a one-off project price or an hourly cost? Is our client a large and established company or a first-time self-publisher? This guide definitely helps you address those types of questions. And like I said before, this book also goes over the best practices for your industry as well, so that you'll be operating with the best kind of ethical morale when you're working with other clients, and so that they can feel comfortable with you and you can feel comfortable with what you're doing. So I would definitely recommend this book to solo entrepreneurs, like sole proprietors and single person LLCs. You don't have to fit this description to use this book. You could definitely be working for like a larger company and like introduce this to your manager, supervisor, boss, or whatever, or just use it yourself. But I think this would be helpful to anyone, but it would be especially helpful to people who are taking on clients in their own company on like an individual basis, especially when you might not necessarily have someone to refer to ask about best practices, pricing, and stuff like that. This book is a great substitute for that, or another like good opinion to like put in when you're trying to work with people in that way. Now on to the next book. Okay, so the next book is the Arts Management Handbook, and this is geared more towards college students or post-grad students who are looking to work for like big organizations and companies and nonprofits and things like that, or even like festival management, theater production. And so you might be in the solo part of your creative journey right now. Like maybe you're still in your room writing the script for your movie, or maybe you're still like writing the book or writing the first draft or whatever, and you can't even pay yourself, let alone a whole cast and crew. But even though that might be the case for you at this moment, this is still a good book to get into because it gives you an idea of how arts businesses and management systems are structured and how they function. This book gives you case examples. So it gives you like a little short story of an example of what could be going on in like a theater production. And then it'll ask you what went wrong in this story or this case study. And so you might be learning of like, oh, well, for instance, this director thought that everybody got the email, but he didn't check. And so the costume designer did not know about the adjustments that were needed. And the stage manager did not know about these accommodations that were needed. It talks to you about what it's like to work in different arts management and arts business structures, whether it's a theater production, whether it's a film production, whether you're in a gallery or whatever. And it shows you the kinds of situations you would want to avoid and how you want to make sure that you're communicating clearly with your staff and how everybody should have their assigned duties. And those duties should be clear and that there shouldn't be any gray area so that everybody knows what needs to be done so that the work, the production, or whatever you're working on can go through smoothly. The case scenarios also give you an idea of what day-to-day operations look like in different arts businesses. Like, what is it like on a film set? What is it like in a theater production? What is it like working in a gallery? And different things like that. And even if your very specific arts career thing isn't mentioned in this book, you could still find a way to apply it to it. You know, so like if you're a writer, for instance, that's more of a solo thing. But once you get a handle on this book and you look at what it looks like to work in different arts management structures, you're like, oh, so if I'm going to be the writer on this, whether I'm writing a book or I'm writing an article in a larger company, I should know my place as like I'm the writer and I'm presenting these ideas. And if I have notes or ideas, I should put that in like a separate document and like give that to the editor. And when the editor looks over your work, whether it's for a solo book or an article for the Huffington Post, they should be giving you notes. They should, if they have corrections that require you to look up a resource, they should give you a link to that or different things like that. This shows you how things should function so that the production makes sense and so that there's less running around with your head cut off. And I want you to remember, even though you might only have a cyber shot right now in a ring light to do for like filming, this book will help you prepare for the day when you have a storage unit full of costumes and lighting equipment for when you're making your big thing. Even if you're not there right now, if you want to be prepared to be there and maybe impress some other people in the room because you know how stuff works and how things should function and you're not a scared intern, basically, and you've got some sense of what to do, you probably want to pick up this book. And even if you're not looking at joining a company per se and you want to be the one to make your production company, by all means, get this book. And this isn't really geared towards film only. This is like all art structures. But if you're going to be in the business of the arts, then you should have a good understanding of like how all the art stuff functions. So, because you need to know about art stuff that's like adjacent to what you do anyway. That would just be like good business practice, and it makes it less of a headache when you have to like work with artists and get stuff from galleries because you know you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm working in film, so I don't really need to know about gallery stuff or theater stuff. Yes, you do. I mean, a great example, and Marvel spoilers for Hawkeye if you haven't seen it yet, but like for instance in Hawkeye, one of the first things that we see is like the Broadway production thing that they did of like the Avengers movie where they like did a stage thing. Even though that was being filmed, they still had to manage that like a stage production because it is about almost the same thing as like when Hamilton was being filmed. Even though it was being filmed, they still had to manage it like a theater production and a film production at the same time. So if you're gonna go in one industry, you're gonna be touching another one, so you might as well learn about them. I would say that this book is good for people who are looking to join big organizations with hefty projects, or you're looking to start your own organizations and hefty projects. It would also be good for those who aren't even in managerial roles in arts management. So you might be like a cog in the machine right now, and you might be reporting to your manager and you're like doing one specific task and you're not running things. But it would still be helpful because you can understand how the ship runs, and maybe your manager would appreciate it if you know who to go to for certain things because you already know a little bit about the business. Everyone from a freelance artist to a costume designer would benefit from knowing about the structure of the companies that they're working with, no matter if it's on a short-term basis or it's for a long-haul kind of thing. The book also has advice on careers and education in arts management to give you like a little taste of that as well. And it also talks about how the government does and doesn't do things in regards to arts management policy. And we always want to keep it legal, so, you know, that's good. Speaking of which, that brings me to the next book, Clearance and Copyright. And I have the 4th edition of this, but this book is totally necessary. And if you're wondering what these are my notes from the class that I took. And I believe that, oh yeah, this was my textbook for my class called The Legal Aspects of Arts and Entertainment. And my professor was an entertainment lawyer. So he's worked with all different kinds of people in all different kinds of things. Like, he showed us pictures of different artists and singers and different people that he's been involved with in his work, including Shawn Mendes. Now, I know this sounds scary because it's a lot of legal stuff and not a lot of people want to dive into legal stuff. It's a lot of subsection this and policy, one point this thing and that thing and the other. I understand, but it is important, and you need to at least have a resource to refer to when you have important questions. And you might have important questions like, can I use this logo in my video? Can I paint a portrait of this person and sell it? Can I use this song in my film? What's the difference between libel and slander? What's the difference between product placement and sponsorship? All of these questions and more can be addressed with this book. And you might not always get the answer. And, you know, if you look in here and you still are questioning things, I would definitely encourage you to still continue to look for the answer and try to find the advice that you need so that you can make sure that you're keeping all your stuff legal. So I would recommend this book to any creative, any person, every single person. I don't care if you're working as a solo entrepreneur or you're working for a big organization, you need a book like this. I would recommend that you get this book. You always need to know if you're keeping stuff legal. You always need to know about the policies and laws in regards to entertainment. No matter if you're a visual artist or you're a director for a film, you need to know these things. And I'm not telling you to do like how I did. You see all these notes and stuff like that. Like, these are the notes from my legal class because I don't remember all of this, but I have this in this book to refer to it. If I'm not sure about something and I'm like, would I get in trouble for this? Would the law come after me? I have this book. So just think of it as like a reference. Think of it as like a dictionary. If you need to know and you're not sure, look in this book. Because everyone's gonna have a legal question at some point. And you might not even realize that your question is a legal question, but if it starts with, am I allowed? Can I? Is this? Like, if you are wondering if you have the ability to do something and it's regards to your creative stuff and it's not about like your practice, but it's about making some work or featuring something, it's probably a legal question and you should consult this book and like consult other legal sources as well. Also, God forbid, but if you find yourself needing to take legal action, or if you're at the center of the legal action, you're gonna need something to refer to as well to see what you're up against and what you're facing. So on that front as well, I would still recommend that you get this book. It might not be the fun book, but you need it. And the next book is Music, Money, and Success, The Insider's Guide to Making Money in the Music Business. And I know this feels very specific and it seems like I'm gearing this towards music producers only or songwriters only, but that's not the case. I would still recommend this book to people in fields that are music adjacent. For example, you might be filming a short film, developing a video game, uploading a video to YouTube, what have you. And you're likely going to need music for those projects. And if you have questions like, what licenses do I need to get this song? Am I allowed to use this song? All that kind of stuff. You can address questions like that with this book. This is a good book for someone, whether you're trying to use a song that's already been written and published, or you're trying to contract someone to write a song for your project. Also, it doesn't really hurt to know how the music industry works, especially when your field is adjacent to that work. So like films, video games, YouTube videos, all the different kind of stuff. If you want to know how the music business works, whether you're a songwriter, producer, or your work is music adjacent, this would be a good book to have. This book covers things like sources of income, music publishing, songwriting, sampling songs, contracts, and more. Again, kind of like with the last book with clearance and copyright, It might feel icky because you just want to be an artist and you just want to vibe, you just want to make your film, you just want to write your song, you don't want to deal with this. But if you don't want to have a headache down the road, it would just be a good idea to go ahead and get this book and think of it as a dictionary. If you have a music or music industry related question, you just have this to refer to. So just have it on your shelf. You know, worst thing you can do is build a library. And the truth of it is that you do need to just grit your teeth and get into it. Because if you have a question about what you can do with a song, if you're allowed to use a song, how you can get paid for your music, or even if the dynamics of a proposed contract makes sense and you want to make sure you're not getting screwed over, you need to reference a source like this. So, you know, if you're working in a music production business, you're a songwriter, or your work is going to be music adjacent, just get this book. I'm not going to tell you again. And lastly, I have this book called Strategic Management in the Arts. If you want to know how the machine works, the machine meaning like arts management and arts related business, if you want to know how the machine works, you need a book like this, and it's going to help you understand how the machine works and how you can make it work well and not just be like a squeaky wheel trying to catch the grease. So this book is broken down into like a one-way flow so that you can start with understanding the types of organizations in the arts and culture sector and the roles in those organizations, as well as the strategic planning that those organizations require, goal planning in those organizations, legal structures in those organizations, and all that kind of stuff. They also go over things like marketing, programming, audience development, which are all principal for whatever sector you're in. And the book is also broken down into theoretical concepts, case studies, kind of like with the last books where we were showing like, okay, here's a day in the life of this imaginary company, and this is going wrong or this is going right. And it can give you examples, practical recommendations, visual materials like tables and charts to show you different steps and different processes, how things look in different businesses or different sectors of arts and culture organizations. I recommend this book to people aspiring to be in their fields or are already in their fields, working to be like arts managers, directors, consultants, or even if you're not in the field and you're being like trying to figure out like if you want to be an arts manager or if you're like working with companies on a contract basis, this would be helpful too, because it still would be helpful to people who are adjacent to like these types of businesses and need to understand how they function so they can understand what they're asking for, the turnaround times, how organizations are structured and things like that. So this would be definitely a good book for people who are specifically aspiring to be like arts managers, directors and consultants and stuff like that, or people who want to understand how that job works because you might be working adjacent to people in those roles or organizations like this. So those are all the books that I have for you, and I hope that you find them helpful. And thank you so much for watching. And if you have any other books or resources that are really good for your art career, definitely let us know in the comments. Everybody here would love to know what's been working for you, and if there's another resource out there that we could use. I'd like to know too. And I sincerely hope that these books help you in your art career and journey. And, you know, thank you again so much for watching, and hope y'all keep creating, keep escaping. Bye, y'all.